Hello friends, if you found your way here, then perhaps something in you remembers. This is not a place of doctrines but of echoes, echoes of the source we all carry, echoes of the truth we were never meant to forget. Here we walk backwards through illusion, forwards into remembrance, and sideways through paradox. I offer no commandments, only tools and a flame held steady in the dark. Welcome to the 6th video in this series on the true nature of reality and consciousness. Before we begin, I will issue my standard caveat. What I am about to tell you is assessed by myself to be approximately 70 to 80% accurate. I give you the broader picture and the general direction. For the details and verification, you will have to seek it out for yourself, as you should and as you must. For one of the rules of the universe is that the truth may only be given to those who are able to resonate with it, via a means that they are able to accept it in. This is one of the reasons why some of the most accurate channels have only a couple of thousand viewers. In the last 2 videos, I outlined the fundamental basis of lived reality via a model of layered density realities. I also spoke of how physical and etheric matter was organised within a solar system, and I also described the descent and ascent processes of souls travelling to and from their oversouls. In this video, I will bring to light some of the hidden mechanics of how human beings and other 3D life forms ideally function within and interact with the invisible infrastructure around them. I say ideally function because once again, the current Earth epoch that we live in is not the normal model for experiencing life in the 3D. So most of humanity is currently operating in and experiencing something quite different from the norm. Also in this video I will start to talk about themes and subjects that are far more common in New Age and spiritual circles such as reincarnation. You can expect to hear common phrases and points of reference that can be explored in books, films, music and other common cultural mediums. And crucially, if you look hard enough on YouTube, you will be able to find first-hand accounts for much of this stuff. But before we begin properly on how life is lived, I would like to give a little more detail on how our present universe is structured. As previously stated, all stars and galactic centres are living beings that perform a process role in the grand design by sending and transmitting data, including the routing of souls to their intended destinations. I also stated that in a regular universe, entities displaying an above normal threshold of negative polarity would be contained and treated by the management layer. But this is not the case for our universe, as its very purpose is to explore the limits, nature and behaviour of the negative polarity. Since the negative polarity behaves in a fashion that is very much like a cancer in the corpus of the all, it must be handled carefully and directed properly. So there is therefore a distinct composition to our universe. Most planets in the 3D density do not harbour life of any sort. Of those that do, the majority of them exist only of plant and animal life and are managed by elemental style of guardian beings. These worlds are not redundant but serve as a mixture of purposes, not least polarity balancing, since these worlds do not have intelligent life that can polarize to the negative, and also as planets in waiting, empty stages on which intelligent life can be seeded at some later point in time. A lot of the 3D cosmos actually fulfills logistical or recuperative roles in support of the main focus point of this universe, which are crucible planets that sit in neutral zones. Crucible planets are worlds that have been designed and set up for the full investigation of polarity play and its effects upon souls. The Earth is one such planet, and is indeed one of the hardest of all such worlds to graduate from. Crucible planets can be considered to be neutral worlds where the forces of positive and negative fight for dominance of the planetary oversoul and its populace. Most of the universe is divided into positive and negative zones where life and societies of that polarity are permitted to exist without too much external interaction. Any individuals not matching the polarity and the permitted frequencies of their planet will not be able to survive for an extended period of time, so there is little to no threat of invasion of positive planets by neighbouring negative ones. Planets of opposing polarity may not even be visible to one another. Souls living on positive aligned planets are primarily sustained by the all's matter light, which is commonly known as prana or chi. Souls and societies that are negatively polarized are not able to gain sustenance from prana chi. They must instead exist as parasites and vampires, stealing negative emotional energy from other living beings, whether via mental, emotional, or physical acts. This negative energy, which is comprised of all the negative emotions such as anger, fear, envy, shame, or guilt, is commonly called loosh. On negative polarized worlds in 4D reality density, there is a complex interstellar loosh economy into which the Earth also currently feeds. Life on positively aligned non-crucible planets is normally a much longer and simpler affair than on Earth. Lifespans are typically 700 to 1,000 years in length. They are often relatively plain worlds with limited environmental challenges, limited wildlife, and limited intelligent life forms. There is also even limitations in racial variety and population. This means that life on these planets is often a long and sedate experience, with few opportunities for trauma, but it comes at the cost of limited opportunities for soul development, which is often delivered by the management layer via positive, neutral, or negative events that alter or even disrupt the mundane flow of life. These deliberately inserted events are called catalysts. Having a highly unlikely chance encounter with a long-lost fond acquaintance, winning big on the lottery, or developing a rare disease are all examples of catalysts. Though I will have to caveat here by saying that higher beings do not micromanage every event in our lives. Most accidents, illnesses, and sudden deaths are merely expressions of energy convergence, not celestial scheduling. Societies that exist on positively aligned worlds and who manage to stay the course often discover through interactions with their higher self of the existence of the All's law of one and their own planet-specifically tailored local version of it. This is pivotal in sustaining the individual, society, and the planet on their collective journey towards graduation. The All's law of one is effectively a set of cosmic principles by which all must live if they are to expect to be in alignment with it and sustained by it. Now is probably the right time to say that one of Earth's many unique facets is that it is a particular class of planet. It is a zoo world. After it was terraformed for billions of years, it was ready for the commencement of life. It was seeded with all the categories and permutations of life in order to be one of several such living libraries of life in this universe. This is one of the reasons why the Earth gets visited by extraterrestrials so much. It's both a drop-off and pick-up point for cosmic DNA transfers. Intelligent life can take any form, but there is often a preference for humanoid forms of various sizes and compositions due to its proven versatility. This means that when we observe animal life here on Earth, there is probably an intelligent version of that creature that's the dominant life form on an alien planet, or even more likely, a humanoid version of that creature. The other big difference to call out between life in general versus standard human life on Earth in this era is that 99% of all intelligent life in the 3D operates with what we would consider to be psychic abilities. Spoken word transmissions, when going about normal societal business, is not the norm on most planets. Intelligent life on other planets primarily communicates thoughts sent directly to each other and will typically only vocalize a simple set of group calls in exactly the same way that we see and observe in animal life here on Earth. It is usual for inhabitants of a planet to be able to visibly see or sense another being's emotional body. This means that the other person's mood can be instantly observed, and it is not possible to willfully deceive, as a lie will be openly transmitted more cleanly than any physical body tell. The other abilities of a normal unfettered mind is the ability to remote view distant locations without physically being present. There is then controlled astral projection of one's emotional body, which is the primary means to visit another terrestrial planet where one's own physiological body is not adapted to visit in the physical. Clairvoyance, which is to say limited snapshots of either seeing or knowing past events or potential futures, and I say potential because of the existence of multiple timelines which limit any element of certainty, is also another ability. Then there is claircognizance, which is the ability to know things without deliberately endeavouring to learn them. Typically, the only vestiges left of this mental abundance present within a human living in our epoch is that of intuition. Intuition, or that gut feeling, is a psychic ability. When a person enters an occupied room where the inhabitants are in a particularly strong mood, either positive or negative, they can usually sense the pervading mood. They will know near instantly whether the people in that room are relaxed, joyous, angry, or sad without having to physically check out each individual for body language cues. The same goes for that foreboding sense of danger, that sinking feeling in the pit of the stomach, even when there is no obvious sign of the lethal situation or danger that is lurking unseen somewhere nearby. It is intuited and felt viscerally via the psychic mechanism. And crucially, some individuals' capabilities are intrinsically better and more developed than others. Let us now move on to the matter of reincarnation. The purpose of life in 3D is to subject a soul to a raft of catalysts and circumstances in order to refine and develop the quality of the soul. You can't achieve this if a person lives just once. In order to set up an appropriate learning experience, it's important to do two things. 1. Reduce the capabilities, knowledge, and intelligence of the soul being entrained, and 2. Each experience needs to largely be a blank slate with only limited bleed-through from previous incarnations. Why? Because an oversoul is a demigod in status. It exists outside of time and has access to all knowledge, the ability to be in multiple locations simultaneously, and can remember everything. Such a being is beyond learning anything. This is why there are layers of density realities. A more limited, less knowledgeable and intelligent copy is dropped off at the density it is appropriate to be learning its curriculum at. One way to think of this is that 5D is university, 4D is high school, and 3D is primary school. When discussing reincarnation, it is always necessary to discuss karma and dharma. The latter is the unconscious life purpose that the oversoul wants its avatar to fulfill. It could be something very mundane, such as being an influential teacher in a small village during a time of turbulence, or it could be to experience killing and being killed on the battlefield as a soldier, or it could be to become a Buddhist monk and spend the whole lifetime absorbed in studying and contemplating reality itself. Karma was a rule and mechanism introduced in this universal cycle's design to counter repeated egregious negative actions of certain souls during their incarnations. An element of consequence was created whereby a soul's actions would be tracked and accounted for upon its death. Karma effectively becomes a currency in the spiritual realm, where souls that have an abundance of positive karma have greater freedom to select more favourable variables in their next incarnation, whilst those who have a karmic deficit will have to balance it out to the break-even point in order to be able to graduate. Karmic debts need not be paid in a one-for-one fashion, but rather the 4D avatar will select from a menu of negative experiences that best fit the goals of the next incarnation. Fulfilling less than desirable roles that help maintain the illusion of 3D reality is also another valid means of paying off negative karma. To truly understand anything, one has to experience it from both ends. It is therefore common practice to put a soul through a logical program of lived experiences, and this program is normally devised and agreed between the 4D avatar and management prior to entering into their next 3D incarnation. This is where Crucible planets such as the Earth really come into their own. On a Crucible planet, it's possible for a soul to experience being rich, poor, male, female, straight, gay, disabled, popular, pariah, all the available races, all belief systems, all ages, all archetypes of character, all available mindsets, all available epochs, until graduation conditions are reached. This wealth of positive and negative experiences simply isn't available on a standard positively aligned planet, where decency must always be maintained. Graduation is typically achieved around the 50th incarnation mark on average, but may easily run to 300 plus on particularly difficult planets. In between incarnations, key lessons are learnt, digested, and even topped up with additional training in the 4D realm prior to the next incarnation selection. Incarnations will occur during an epoch best suited for the next lesson for development. This means that incarnations do not follow linear time in sequence. A soul incarnating on a Crucible planet is also constantly overseen by at least one 4D guide, the so-called guardian angel of folklore. Upon incarnation into the 3D, the soul is subjected to veiling so that once more a blank slate is achieved. Certain previous aptitudes and attitudes may persist because they have become inherent to the soul. The soul is deployed to the pre-agreed location in the configured mind and bodies. The soul's physical body is animated by the planetary grid via the etheric body. The etheric body draws prana, chi, from the grid and relays it to the physical body, and then processes it via the 7 chakras or power points that run vertically through the humanoid body. All thoughts, words and deeds transmitted or received by the soul has an effect of resonance on the sender and recipient's emotional body. All food and media consumed has its own resonance that affects the quality of the recipient's emotional body. The state of the emotional body is slowly and steadily related and relayed and translated to the physical body. Individuals operating at a high resonance frequency will function in a general state of happiness and joy without illness and colds. Conversely, those operating at a low resonance frequency will often function in states of guilt or sadness and suffer from poor general health. The only exceptions to these rules are pre-planned catalysts, so no one can expect an entirely smooth ride. And the other exception are individuals who are polarized to the negative force, whether consciously or unconsciously. They will experience the converse conditions, i.e. they will experience joy and good health when committing negative acts, and bad moods and poor health when committing positive acts. When a person conducts their everyday business during waking life, only a relatively small portion of their thoughts are actually their own. The degree to which they are depends on the quality of an individual's consciousness. All baseline thoughts, knowledge and beliefs are not the sole product of tuition from parents and schools. Commonly held concepts, beliefs and knowledge are transmitted by the mental body up to and relayed down by the morphic field, aka the common consciousness. Commonly held ideas and beliefs create thought forms in the common consciousness. If enough people believe in and feed their emotions into a thought form, then it can become an animated entity known as an egregore. An egregore is a being formed of consciousness, and it can develop from being a relatively passive semi-conscious being that is invoked during seasonal holidays, such as Santa Claus during Christmas, to being a 24-hour fully autonomous intelligent entity that is capable of strategizing and intelligently transmitting thought loops to others in order to sustain and increase its strength. On non-crucible planets, the common consciousness is curated by both the 3D inhabitants and 4D and 5D management guardians to ensure the mental realm remains healthy and conducive to a pleasant and harmonious life. On crucible planets, where 5D positive and negative architect entities are launching multi-layered counter-propaganda campaigns with factional 4D foot soldiers duking it out, powerful egregores of false gods, nation states, sports teams, celebrities and consumer brands all begin to dominate 3D minds and occupy significant amounts of their waking thoughts. On top of all this activity within and around the common consciousness, a 3D being's own oversoul and its 5D deputy, the higher self, can attempt to influence and align their 3D avatar's thoughts, speech and actions to match their shared soul chords. The more conscious and aligned with their shared soul chords, the clearer the channel of communication between the oversoul and the higher self and the avatar becomes. While in a veiled state on a high-density 3D world like the Earth, the mental communication between oversoul, higher self and avatar will be very subtle in nature for 99% of people. It will usually take the form of a feeling of bliss, contentment accompanied by a high-concept thought just appearing fully developed in the mind, or else a simple message of encouragement or well-being delivered in their own inner voice, or the voice of a beloved departed relative, or someone else entirely. If an individual is not aligned at all with their oversoul and their soul chords, then they are usually operating at a much lower frequency than they should be. The channel of communication is at this point almost entirely closed off. The avatar will not receive or accept any thought communication sent by the 5D avatar because their frequencies no longer match. The avatar will now be guided by their own ego self, which is another bit of soul architecture designed to create a sense of separation from the all. This disconnected state now permits other agencies to step in and start to attempt to influence the avatar, both via the mental and emotional bodies. The nature of those agencies will depend entirely on where the avatar is on the frequency spectrum. If they are a standard person who is not spiritually awakened, then they will begin to be preyed upon by the most dominant egregores that they resonate with, and their energies will be siphoned off, resulting in lethargy, tiredness, and irritability. If someone leads a very low-res life for an extended period of time, then they will begin to attract lower negative entities. There are various different sorts of lower negative entities that may come to feed on the person's energies, including human, elemental, dimensional, and non-terrestrial ones. These negative entities will normally also attempt to inject thoughts and emotions into the individual's mind, tempting them to take steadily more negative actions which they can then feed upon. Individuals that fall into this web and who start descending down the frequency ladder unconsciously will also become vulnerable to eventual attempts at possession by even greater negative entities. An oversoul will often sever the connection with their avatar at this point to prevent contamination of their cords. Significant interactions between the oversoul and the 3D avatar occurs during periods of sleep when the avatar travels to the 4D astral realm that corresponds to their resonance. On a non-crucible positive planet, each astral subband corridor is dedicated to a different beneficial purpose. The avatar will be freely directed by the oversoul to the relevant destination so long as the resonance threshold is not crossed. Avatars may receive treatment, tuition, or direction which they will normally not consciously remember upon waking. On a crucible planet, the astral subband corridors are fought for and held by positive and negative factions, and they may change hands at different periods of time. Low resonating souls will in all probability end up in negatively held astral corridors that are used to expose avatars to guilt, anger and fear loops via nightmares or false instructions via mimic guides, all of which is designed to prevent soul progression. Periods of sleep also serve as downtime in the computer science sense of the word. It is the place and time where patches and updates are made by management, both to individual souls but also to timelines and the planetary environment as a whole. The fact that everyone has to sleep helps to maintain 3D narrative and functional continuity. In the next video I will cover the well-trodden path of polarity and the law of one, with the aim of bringing some fresh insight to both. You don't have to believe any of this. Hold it like a metaphor, see where it takes you. I suspect you'll be surprised. Until then, take care and goodbye.